A standard game disc is 120 millimeters in diameter, although the circumference could also be described as the length. So in this case, it would be around 377 millimeters rounded. So this year, PlayStation did a thing called the 2020 Wrap-Up, where you can sign in and see all sorts of statistics tied to your account for the year. The most important, I think, for most people was the time they spent playing and what their top games were. They were definitely the most important ones for me. So last year, I played 833 hours over 62 games, with my top games being Persona 5, Warzone, and Nier Automata in that order, with 187 hours in Persona, 142 in Warzone, and 67 in Nier. That only leaves 437 hours over the remaining 59 games, giving me an average playtime of 7.5 hours with an average playtime of 13.5 overall. I know to some people, including my friends, these are rookie numbers, but it's what I got. Now, leaving multiplayer games out of this, 7.5 hours is not a long game by any means. And considering I only did one playthrough of both Nier and Persona, fucking 187 hours in the latter is an absolutely astronomical time for a single player story game. But all of this got me thinking, which games did I enjoy most last year? What is the optimum length of time a game should be? And why was it possible for me to put so much fucking time into Persona 5? Well, the answer to the last one is easy. It's because Persona 5 is a fucking amazing game, but the other two are a little harder to break down. For the most part, I'm all about the action. I love playing games for the gameplay, and it's the reason I play so many roguelikes. So right off the bat, I would think short games are the games for me, but that just isn't necessarily the case at all. Games like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey can be pretty light on story sections, but have so much to do that they last upwards of 100 hours, and I've put at least that amount of time into each of them. At the same time, there are short games like Oxenfree that have very little in the way of killing things and jumping, but tell an amazing and engaging story in a few hours while presenting a unique gameplay dynamic. So maybe the issue is cutscenes. Well, that does make a lot more sense. On the whole, I hate cutscenes, but some of my favourite games are filled with them. Persona 5 is like 50% reading dialogue. Nier Automata and Okami and The Last of Us and Red Dead Redemption 2 all have plenty of long-ass cutscenes, and I love the stories in all of those games. It sounds insane, but the characters in those games feel like real people who I know like good friends, and their journeys will stay with me forever. Metal Gear Solid 4 has an hour-and-a-half long final cutscene, with 9 hours of cutscenes total, and I completed that game like 5 times and absolutely cherished it when I was younger. The batshit crazy storyline and mad themes and references, and blonde octopus models and skin-tight latex just really had me hooked. Damn, I was so into short-haired blonde girls for years after playing this. I probably shouldn't have said that. The issue I've got with long-ass cutscenes in most video games is that a lot of the time their stories are just so fucking generic, and the characters are so generic, and the gameplay is... well, I mean, the gameplay can sometimes be pretty good, and sometimes it's just generic as well. I think the crux of what I'm getting at here is that the length of a game, and whether it's good or not, depends on 3 things: quality, engagement, and focus, all of which are interlinked and could broadly be described as pacing. There are amazing games which can suffer from 1 or 2 of these issues, but they're the type of games that I don't end up seeing the end credits for. Obviously, the game has to be good quality, otherwise you aren't going to play it. But more than that, the game has to be of consistent quality. If a game has amazing combat and an amazing story, but it's filled with hours of boring climbing sections, you might be right in thinking, why didn't they just remove the climbing sections entirely? It might not ruin the game for you, but you might feel like it dragged on a bit. Engagement is a bit more varied. as what engages some people will not engage others. It's not the same as quality, as it's more about variety. What about a game is pushing you forward? Do you want to see the next area? Unlock the next cool item or outfit? Or are you in it for the story and are desperate to see how it all ends? Or is the crushing difficulty pushing you to get to the top of that mountain? A game can be really great quality when it comes to core gameplay, but repetitive enemy encounters, stale level design, or a so-so narrative can really damage a game's engagement for a lot of players. Focus is the area I think most games fall down on when it comes to length. Basically, this is the point where when designing a game, the developers are deciding how long it should be, and they basically just make the game way too long for the actual content they have. Needless backtracking or reused enemies, putting an open world where there shouldn't be one, and stretching gameplay out well beyond a reasonable level are all signs of this, although sometimes these issues are due to budget or time limitations. I think it's very hard for a game to be too short unless it's clearly unfinished or way overpriced, and shorter games like Celeste, Journey, Undertale, Inside, Shadow of the Colossus, Donut County and Oxenfree all explore their gameplay and say what they want to say perfectly without filler. Games that encourage multiple playthroughs or are just so compelling you have to play through them over and over can walk a great line between being short enough to allow the average person to have a good time completing them, whilst also allowing people who love them to play them for much longer than their average runtime. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that I think it's very difficult for a game to be too short, but quite a lot easier for a game to be too long. And really there are a lot of games that I would love a lot more and even play a lot more if they removed some of the filler. I don't mean to say long games are inherently bad, just that a game should justify its length with interesting mechanics, new areas, or an engaging story. It's all about good pacing. And also that Persona 5 is fucking awesome and deserves every second of its runtime. Thank you to everyone at Atlas and P Studio for writing one of the most compelling video game stories and making characters that feel genuinely real. Thank you to Anne Takamaki for being Anne Takamaki. And thank you for watching. Peace.